I'm so happy to be here. I know Donna and I enjoy it. Donna likes to play the piano, and she feels welcomed here too. And I'm appreciating the support I'm getting from Joe and Chad back there, because without them this wouldn't be too much. So I'm appreciating that we have them. And they were also Minutemen, because I did this sermon in Harrison back on the 19th of February. And we had it done, as you can see on the screen, and I had Wee over there did it. He's the AV man, and he did it for me. And then when Rodney asked me to come and speak here, I wanted to do it, but I didn't know if it could be done. And I asked Wee, and he said, well, I think I can put it in a little envelope, however they do. I'm not real computer techy, but he said he could do it. He could put it in a file and text it to Rodney. Rodney says, if you text it to me, I'll get it to the right people. And but the problem was Wee was out of town, and it didn't happen. And I think they got it just yesterday, didn't you guys? And so they're Minutemen too. So praise the Lord for the help there. Let's bow our heads just a moment. Father, again, what a privilege it is to be here. And Father, anoint my lips this morning, and if it could be possible, Lord, remove me, that this morning it is not me that the people see, Lord, but we would see Jesus. It is our prayer this morning. Help me to say the words you would have me say, and present the words that you would have the people hear this morning is our prayer. Amen. It's the early spring of 1844. Now, 1844 is a date that's pretty familiar to Seventh-day Adventists, is it not? But early spring, an itinerant preacher, he was actually a Methodist Episcopalian. He was sort of a mix. He traveled and he preached in these churches. And he went to a small church in Washington, New Hampshire. And his purpose for going there was to hold a communion service. And as he stood up before the church to present the communion, he said, everyone is welcome to take part in our communion, but I would have one requirement, that those that are taking part are willing to commit themselves to God and to the keeping of his commandments. Amen. That was a worthy prayer and a good condition. Sitting in that congregation was a lady by the name of Rachel Oakes. Now, Rachel Oakes was a Seventh-day Baptist. And when that service was over, she went to Brother Wheeler and she said, I'd like to have a visit. Would it be possible? And he said, surely. And so later that week, he visited Rachel in her home. She said, Brother Wheeler, when you stood up and said, those taking part in this communion service should be willing to commit to keeping the commandments, and that's all of the commandments, I almost jumped right up out of my seat. And he said, well, I noticed that, and Sister Oakes, had you jumped up out of your seat, what would you have said? She said, I would have said, Brother Wheeler, you need to put that cloth back over that communion table until you're ready to keep all of the commandments. Well, That's a pretty shock to the man. And he said, well, what do you mean? She said, you know, you're keeping 9 of them, but you're not keeping 10. And she sat him down and she gave him a Bible study on the 4th commandment. Praise God that Frederick Wheeler was a sincere, honest Christian. And I'm going to say something this morning. God has his people out there in the other churches. They are sincere. They are honest. I have a brother and a sister-in-law. They are some of the finest Christian people you would ever want to meet. They believe in God, and they believe in their church, and they are Roman Catholic. Now, I say they're my brother and sister. They are my biological brother. Lester is my biological brother. He's 6 years older than I am. And I have been praying, how do I reach them without condemning what they are believing and how they worship? And I just pray for wisdom for that, because I know that as far as they know, they are living up to everything they know to be living up to. So Rachel Oakes, she talked to him about the 4th commandment, and he said, well, I'll go home and I will study it. And he did. And 2 weeks later, he preached again, and he preached his first Sabbath sermon. Frederick Wheeler, as far as we know historically, was the first Seventh-day Adventist. You see, the word Adventist were those at that time following William Miller, looking forward to the second Advent, correct? But there weren't too many of them keeping the seventh-day Sabbath. It just hadn't been out. Now, it's interesting that it came from Seventh-day Baptists. We'll say a little bit more about that later. By establishing the seventh-day Sabbath, it became the second pillar of a platform. I have wished that I had a picture of this. I could put it on the screen, but I'll have to describe it. You'll have to be with me. Ellen White had a vision, and in that vision, she was shown a platform with 4 pillars, 4 heavy posts. The first being the second Advent, Christ's coming, which was just beginning to be preached. As I said, William Miller had thousands of followers. The second being the seventh-day Sabbath, which was just beginning to be understood. The third pillar was an attack against spiritualism. It's an understanding of the state of the dead. And the fourth pillar of this platform would be the sanctuary message, which would be coming on October the 22nd, 1844. Not very far away from when Brother Wheeler first accepted the Sabbath message. In this vision, Sister White saw a group of people standing on this platform. As long as they stood on this platform, they were safe, they were secure. But some, and I should mention there was one more facet of this platform. There were stairs leading up to it, just 3 stairs, very sturdy, also forming a part of the support for the platform. And these 3 stairs, you guessed it, were the 3 angels' message. As people came and climbed the stairs and stood on the platform, as long as they pressed together and stayed there, they were safe. But some decided they would get off and they would climb down. some looked at these pillars and found fault with them. They said they're not constructed quite right. They need changing. And soon they drifted away, and these people were lost. I told you that our Seventh-day Sabbath understanding came from the Seventh-day Baptist. Did you ever wonder what happened to the Seventh-day Baptist as a people? It's kind of interesting. Their membership went down in 2007 to 45,000 people worldwide. Down 5,000 from their peak, which at that time was 50,000 people. So why did they not continue to grow? They believed that the seventh-day Sabbath was the correct day. They interpreted it correct. But from then on, they accepted no light. They did not accept the fact that it was tied to the three angels' message and other beliefs they just rejected, and they did not grow. Seventh-day Adventist compared, I just want to compare Seventh-day Adventist. We now have a membership of over 21,500,000 people. We have the second largest educational system. You all are familiar with our medical system, the printing houses, and on and on and on. God has blessed because we have accepted the light that God has given us. And we pray that we'll continue to do that. When I was preparing for this sermon, I had an idea in mind. As I told you, I was to preach on the 19th of February in Harrison. And I had read the book by Ed Reed, Sunday's Coming. I found another book that was very, very interesting. I recommend it to you. I like to tell you where I get my resources from. And it was called Could It Really Happen? And a very, very interesting book. And it very deep read, actually. And it points out how and why it can happen. And but I didn't have the information I needed. I just didn't have it, and I kept mulling it over and praying about it, but I still felt it was what God wanted me to speak on. Now, I don't know where it came from. I had a few books on my nightstand. I picked one of them up, and under it was a very small orange book. The title of it was The Crisis Ahead. And it was all there. What is coming? And it was in question and answer form. It was put together by a man by the name of Robert Olson, and he did it. It's a compilation for his Spirit of Prophecy class out in Pacific Union College. But he did it in the year 1970, so we're talking 52 years ago. But when I was reading it, it read like today. And I am thinking, I've got to share this with the people. And this is exactly what I'm looking for. Well, there's 36 chapters in it, and we aren't going to do 36 chapters. Today would be to be here, I don't want to drive home in the dark. And anyway, but I found be able to abbreviate it, and I said, but if we could only put it on the screen so that you could see it, it would be so much better. And that's when I talked to Wee, and he said he thought he could do it, and so I typed it up and he put it together. So with the help of people who are a lot smarter than I am, you're going to get to see it today a little bit. And there's 2 points that I hope that you can take home from this sermon today. The first point is, not only is Sunday coming, by that you'll see what we talk about, Sunday legislation, Sunday laws. Sunday's coming, but also Jesus is coming. And he's coming back to take us home. I believe that this is closer than any of us here may believe. You know, we're living in a different world today, this week, than we lived in last week. Things are moving fast. And in this book, Can It Really Happen? And I'll quote him. He says, I do not believe that there is any priest or bishop that wants to persecute us. Not at all. I do not believe that when you look at the moral majority, Pat Robertson, whoever they are, James Dobson, all of those that are leading out in the moral majority, that they would like to put a death sentence on us. He said, I don't believe for a moment that there's anyone there that would do it. So if that's true, and there's nobody that wants to persecute us at all, well, what are we worrying about? Because you will not believe how fast things can change when a crisis comes. When this country comes to a point where it has apostatized so badly, then it can collapse. And when it is collapsing, there will be people that will be looking for somebody to blame. We're going to look at that and see some quotes today on the screen. But things can change almost instantaneously. People have asked, and we've got doctors here that know so much more than I do, so I'm not going to speak on this, but people have asked, is this COVID-19 crisis that's coming, is it part of the mark of the beast? And I think I can unequivocally say, no, it is not the mark of the beast. So then if it's not, then what is it? Well, it's conditioning. It is conditioning the people to do what they're told, even if it's against their conscience. It's conditioning. What are three things that it is doing? And what are three things they are doing to draw us, push us into lying? Now, I want to say something about this. I'm not here to tell you what you should do. I have friends that in very good conscience, in fact, just a close friend, I consider him a brother, and he was a pastor. He went on to become recently a ministerial secretary in another conference. Very godly man, love him. But he felt because he was visiting people who might be sicker, he didn't want to risk taking it, and so he went and he got his vaccination. As we're talking about it, he said, you know, I have two sons. One of them went and got vaccinated, and the other said, they'll never touch me with that. And I have friends over on this side who have said, we do not believe in it, we do not want this put in our body, and we will not do it. If it costs us our job, doesn't matter what it is, we're not doing it. Now, the only problem, and you know what they're all agreed on? Both of them. And everyone I've talked to, you know what they're agreed on? That no one should compel someone else to do something that they feel is against their conscience. Oh. So how do we convince people to do what we want them to do? First word is bribery. You know, the crazy things they've bribed people with to get them to take the shot, it's unbelievable. In some places, they've offered them a beer. Some places, a pizza. In some places, money, as much as $100 if you'll take the shot. Bribery. When that doesn't work, coerce them, make them unpopular, threaten them, tell them that they are a threat to their community and disloyal to their neighbors, and then finally convict them. Three things Interesting. Bribery, coercion, conviction. You know what that has in common with the Sunday law? Read it. Chapter 38, 592, the last paragraph of the great controversy. I find those same words. Bribe, persuade, compel. So, is the vaccinations the mark of the beast? No, it is not. But it's certainly conditioning us to accept it when it comes. That's my belief. Now, if any of you want to argue with me, you're entitled to your belief too. But I certainly believe we're being conditioned. So, if we can, I'm going to ask them, the boys back there, Joe and Chad, and I so appreciate you. Can we go to the first question here? And I'll read it. What event must take place before the movement to make a national Sunday worship can take place? What event's got to happen first? And let's look at the answer. A union of Protestant churches. You know, many people argued about this. They said, this can never happen because the Protestant churches, there's over hundreds of them. They're so diversified and they have so many different beliefs, you'll never unite them. They just won't do it. But you know what's happening? There's been for years in these churches of the Protestant faith a strong and growing sentiment in favor of a union based upon common points of interest. And you know what they do about everything else when they believe differently? They say, let's not talk about it, let's overlook it. That's the new theology. Just be tolerant of everyone else. Let's go to the next question. What are the two errors in doctrine held in common by these churches? And let's go to the answer. What two errors of doctrine are held in common? And look at that. Through two great errors. The immortality of the soul, the fact that when you die, you go straight to heaven. You have nothing to worry about. Or if you've been really bad, you don't get to go up, you go down. And then Sunday sacredness. That's what the Protestant churches, 99% have in common. That's what they believe. And under these two common beliefs, Satan will bring the people under his deceptions. While the former lays the foundation for spiritualism, and you know, we could do a whole sermon, probably 3 or 4 of them, on what's going on in the world today in spiritualism, couldn't we? What the new television programs are bringing out, the movies are bringing out about ghosts, about people who have lived before, they're coming back. It's filled with it. Our medias are just filled with it. Our books, our magazines. Spiritualism. The dead can really talk to you, you know. And then Sunday sacredness. As things in this country get so bad, the leaders are going to say we have to turn back to God and we have to turn back to worshiping Him on the Lord's Day. We could have a whole discussion which one is the Lord's Day, but nevertheless, we know where our Protestant brothers and sisters are going to go. And it's up to us to witness, to show them what really is the Lord's Day. Let's go to number 3, question number 3. And I'll tell you before I But we will not be here all day. I've outlined this in only 13 questions. 13 questions. Hopefully we make the points we need to make with that. Will Protestants eventually reunite with Catholics? This seemed totally impossible. When our government was first founded, the prejudice against Catholicism was so strong that in states like Maryland and Virginia, it was illegal for a Catholic to even hold a position such as mayor or city councilman. They weren't allowed. Just being Catholic was enough to get you banned. Did you ever look at the Supreme Court lately? It's mostly Catholic, majority of Catholic. Years ago, 1960, JFK ran for president. There was a lot of hostility because he was a Catholic, and they took him down to Texas, and he had to pledge allegiance before a group of politicians that he would give his allegiance to the United States Constitution and allow no foreign power to influence him in any way, shape, or form. He did that. He won the election, and he kept his promise. When it came up that there was a bill to be passed for to give money for parochial schools, he voted against it. That really made the Catholics angry because they wanted funds to support their schools. It actually would have benefited Adventists at the same time. But he voted against it. He said he believed in the separation of church and state, and the public should not be asked to fund parochial schools. And that's as it should have been. So he actually kept his word. That may have been what got him killed. I don't know. I'm not going to go there. But he did. He was that strong. Recently, we voted in a president. And the fact that he was Catholic never even was, it didn't even rate mention. They just accepted him as Catholic. So now we have a Catholic president and a Catholic Supreme Court, and many of the members in Congress are Catholic, and the Senate. And I shouldn't say we don't think anything of it, but the world does not think anything of that. They accept it. Business as usual. Will Protestants eventually reunite with Catholicism? Back before 1900, when Ellen White wrote the book, The Great Controversy, she made this statement. Let's go to the answer to that. So we didn't think this up yesterday. This was prophesied over 100 years ago. I didn't think of the exact number, but like 130, 140 years it is that this was written. She says, when Protestants shall stretch their hand across the gulf to grasp the hand of the Roman power, when she reaches over the abyss to clasp hands with spiritualism, when under the threefold union our country shall repudiate, listen to that statement, will repudiate every principle of its constitution. You know, there's always been, recently, at least I shouldn't say always, but recently, what a call by our people in government. The Constitution is outdated. It needs to be upgraded. It was okay back then, they are saying, but now we need something better. We need something new. And she says this will happen. She says they will repudiate every principle of the Constitution. I'm going to ask you something. When we see the legislation that's been put out right now about this COVID crisis, you see anything in the Constitution that's being violated? You see a lot that's being violated, and the people are accepting it. They don't even know what the Constitution says. They have been dumbed down. You know, there's a book about the dumbing down of America. They've done a very good job of it. People do not understand what our rights are, what our rights were given. I can't remember which man was when he came out after writing the Constitution, and he said, well, it's a great Constitution if you can keep it. If you can keep it. The government, she says here, the Constitution, as a Protestant and a Republican government, and it will make provision for the propagation of papal falsehoods and delusions. Then we may know the time has come for the marvelous workings of Satan, and that the end is near. Any of you feel that the end is getting near here this morning? We are seeing it, aren't we? We are seeing it. Next question, question 4. Where's the pressure for this Sunday legislation coming from? And I think we'll just go to the answer. The dignitaries of the church and state will unite, and look at the words again, to bribe, persuade, and compel all classes of people to honor Sunday. Do I have it there? I think there's one more statement I have here. Political corruption is destroying love of justice and the regard for the truth. We don't see any political corruption in our government today, do we? Someone once said, well, I know he's lying because his lips are moving. And I believe that we see it. Now, in saying that, yeah, political corruption, good. It's destroying the love of justice. But even as we say that, I have another comment to make. We are told that God has his people in government positions at this time. And when these things come forward, there will be those that stand up and stand for what is right. And I don't know who they are, you don't know who they are, but God does. And in spite of all of this corruption we see in our government, and we certainly see it, we know the briberies, the bribes that are being taken, the decisions that are made because they're being bribed. And we could talk about it all day, but I'm not here to talk politics. This is not what it's about. But anyway, and it says, even in free America, you can read it there, rulers and legislators, in order to secure public favor, will yield to the popular demand for a law enforcing Sunday. I want to ask you the next question, and Chad, you can bring it up. Do these Sunday advocates, do they have any idea what they're doing? No. Do they know? No, someone said right out there, no, they don't. No, they have no idea the consequences of the laws they're making and how they will really affect us down the line. It's a domino effect. You make one law, you make another law to cover it, and it keeps going. It's a very slippery slope. Let's get the answer, number 5. There are many, even those engaged in this movement for Sunday enforcement, who are blinded to the results which will follow this action. They don't see that they're striking directly against religious liberty, and there are many who have never understood the claims of the Bible. You know, there's a television program, Jeopardy. how many of you, well, I won't ask how many have watched it, but you all know what I'm talking about, don't you? The program Jeopardy. The only reason that I get a little of it is because it comes on just before the evening news, and I tune in to get the evening news. And last year, one of the star contestants who was winning hundreds of thousands of dollars, there was a simple question on it. I don't remember the question, but it was so simple. It was something like, who was Abraham's son, something like that. And all three of the contestants missed it. And so just for fun, I took that question. Donna was teaching school in our church school, and we're talking fourth graders, third graders, fifth graders. I said, ask them this question, and we asked them, and every one of them got it right. Is there something to be said about Christian education? Because these geniuses had no concept. I bring that up. There are many who've never understood the claims of the Bible Sabbath and the false foundation upon which the Sunday institution rests. I was talking with a Baptist man a few years ago, and we got into that, and I showed him, he asked about, well, we were talking about Daniel, and we were talking about the point that the text that he shall think to change times and laws, and I was making the point that he was the Antichrist, was the papacy. And so he said, well, what times and laws did he change? I said, well, let's go to Genesis. We looked at the fourth commandment. And then we came to Exodus 20 and we read it. And I said, and you can go all the way through to Revelation and it's never going to change. And he's a sincere Baptist, and he looked at me and he said, well, who changed it? So we had that Bible study, Constantine and why and so forth, and the papacy was behind it. Number 6. Let's go to number 6. I should look to see how I'm doing on time. Well, we'll be here. We'll be okay. Will the United States continue to be a favored nation after she's legally set aside the laws of God and enacted a Sunday law? This is where it gets very interesting. The United States has always been a favored nation with liberty and justice for all, under God, right? Will it continue to be? And it says here, let's go to the answer. People of the United States have been a favored people. We all know that. But when they restrict religious liberty, surrender Protestantism, give countenance to popery, the measure of their guilt will be full, and national apostasy will be registered in the books of heaven. And national apostasy is combined with national ruin. Can you see us headed toward any kind of national ruin? Yes. Did you buy any gas this week? Well, I'm being a little facetious maybe, but can we sustain the kind of prices and inflation and the things that's going on? I don't think so. Let's go to the next one. The next part of that answer. So may this apostasy be a sign to us that the limit of God's forbearance is reached. God's forbearance is reached, and that the measures of our nation's iniquity is full. Folks, I'm going to say something. I believe we're fast getting there. I think we're very fast getting there. What's going to be the result I just said this a minute ago, I got ahead of myself, but what's going to be the result of this nation's apostasy? Number 7. Go ahead and give the answer, because I just did. The result of the apostasy, national apostasy, will be national ruin. So let's go to the question 8 back there, guys. Question 8 said, who's going to get the credit for this? Who will be blamed for this ruin, and how bitter will the hatred for Seventh-day Adventists become? How bitter? Let's look at the answer. There will come a time when, because of our advocacy of the truth, that we're going to be considered traitors. Can you imagine? Can you think of ourselves as traitors? I mean, you know, we're loyal to the government, are we not? We're loyal. And then on down, another interesting question that I found here. What organizations will make it extremely difficult for Adventists to continue their work in the cities? And I thought that maybe at one time, as I had been studying this out, that maybe we had just gone so long this wasn't going to be a problem. It's talking about labor unions. And I saw, you know, back when Reagan broke the labor unions, the air traffic controllers, he fired them all. He says, we don't worry about labor unions. They had big problems in the auto industry. They were going down, and I thought they no longer wielded any power, but they do. They wield an enormous amount of power today. And it says here, the time's coming when the controlling power of the labor unions are going to be very oppressive. What action, let's go to question number 10. What action should our people take when they see these things taking place? We can go to the answer. And I think I'm preaching to the choir when I'm preaching here in Huntsville, as you folks live in the country. I don't see any of you here involved in the cities. But again and again, the Lord has instructed that our people are to take their families away from the cities. I know, I look forward, and I did that some 28 years ago. I moved into the country. I've never regretted a moment of it. Love where I'm at, love being out. And will we experience persecution living in the country? Eventually, yes. But far less severe and far less quickly, I don't know what's the word to say, but than if we lived in the cities, and we were told that. I've lived by 2 principles that I would share, and I would pass it on. Move into the country, find a place, move to the country, 1, and avoid debt like the plague. I talked to a Seventh-day Adventist brother not very long, he's a close friend, and he has a job where he's a medic, he flies on helicopters. And he said, they're going to force me to get vaccinated. I said, man, just don't do it. He says, well, I have to. I said, why? Well, I've got children to support. We bought a new home. And he said, I couldn't make the payments. I would lose my home. I couldn't support my family. Again, bribery, coercion, compulsion. But avoid debt like the plague. Again, we can read it there. Find a place in the country where they can raise their own provisions. For in the future, the problem of buying and selling is going to become a very serious one. And what does it say there? Yeah, just go to the next one, please. The next one. The time is coming when we cannot sell at any price. The decree will go forward prohibiting men to buy or sell of any man save him that has the mark of the beast. You know, I used to say, well, I don't see how they can do that. But in my pocket now, I don't carry very much cash. You know, I don't think many of us do. If you travel or you're going out to buy, it's that card, isn't it? It's that plastic card. And you push it in the machine and everything's accepted. You pay your bill every month. It's all good. It's all well and good until you push it in the machine and you get one word that comes up and it says declined. And it's all over. It shuts you down just like that. So there comes a time, if they want to, that they can say we don't. What additional law, let's go to number 11. What additional law is going to be enacted before the close of probation? And let's go to the answer. The time of trouble is about to come upon the people of God. Then it is then that the decree go forth forbidding those who keep the Sabbath of the Lord to buy or sell, and threatening them with punishment and even death if they do not observe the first day of the week of Sabbath. And we know this text. At that time, Michael shall stand up, the great prince would stand for the children of the people, and there shall be trouble such as never was a nation. I believe, folks, we're moving very close to that time. We're coming on it full speed ahead, I think. Let's go to number 12. And who's going to be the devil's most efficient agents in misrepresenting and accusing Seventh-day Adventists? Who's going to be? You know, I don't know if any of you have read his books or listened to his CDs or tapes, but a man I have greatly admired over the years is a man named Lewis Walton. He was a lawyer from California, and he traveled the United States dedicated to speaking on final events and the spirit of prophecy. I greatly admire him. And he's made a statement that stuck in my mind over the years. He said, you know, if I were to apostatize, he's a brilliant man, he's a lawyer. He said, if I were to apostatize, he said, I think I could be a big problem to you. I think he could. And I don't think he ever would be. He's the most dedicated man I know. But there are men like him and in position like him who have that knowledge, who could be a big problem to us. Let's give the answer to that. Number 12. Men of talent and pleasing address who once rejoiced in our truth. They may have been conference leaders, whatever. But when Sabbath keepers are brought into court to answer for their faith, these apostates are the most effective agents of Satan to misrepresent and accuse them, and by false reports and insinuations to stir up the rulers against them. Finally, the last one. What's the event that's going to close all of history? The second coming. Go ahead and give the answers there, boys. Soon there appears in the east a small black cloud, and about half the size of a man's hand. The King of Kings descends upon the cloud wrapped in flaming fire. As Lewis Walton says, the only escape from this old planet is going to be up. I've been reading a book. It's quite an interesting one. It's about angels. And you know, there's a lot of books written about angels, and many of them are angel stories about how angels delivered people and all. But that's not what this book is at all. This is the work of angels, who they are, what they do. And the book says when we are born, we are given a guardian angel. The guardian angel stays with us all of our life. As long, I'm sure at times he's very disappointed in some of our actions. I know it will be in my case. But when we want to do what's right, he's there to help and support. When we see that black cloud in the sky, it's at that time that this guardian angel will make himself known to us if we are still alive. And then from that point forward, he will guide us forward. He will be with us and introduce us to those that we have witnessed to. And he'll say, this person is here because of you. And he will be with us probably throughout eternity, at least be there for us. And if we've died, if we're in the grave, the first person we see when we are raised up will be our guardian angel. And he will take us and he will introduce us to the heavenly hosts and our friends and our neighbors and our loved ones. I'm just looking forward to meeting him. And I know each of you are too. So we're looking forward to that day. Okay, thank you for your time this morning.
Please stand and let's do our closing hymn, number 212. Just almost